In the last installment, I explained to you what the Cambrian explosion really is. It is the emergence of almost all crown group animal phyla within the first 20 million years of the Cambrian. Now I will to explain to you the four major prerequisites for the Cambrian explosion. That means the oceans and the atmosphere and the world had to be just ready and right for large animals to explode. What are those? I would like you to first write down again a couple of questions. Number one, what are the four major prerequisites? Number two, why do large creatures need more oxygen to breathe than smaller ones? How is the massive radiation of mammals linked to the extinction of dinosaurs? And what has it got to do with the Cambrian explosion? Prerequisite number one, oxygen. Now, what you see here is a small single-celled creature. It doesn't have a lung. It cannot actively breathe. How does this thing get oxygen? Very simple. If you are a small cell and you live in water and there's oxygen molecules dissolved in the water, they will randomly diffuse around. Some will simply hit the surface of the cell, diffuse through the membrane and get into the cell. This is how a small cell like that one gets oxygen, random diffusion. Now, if you're not just a simple single cell, but you're a much larger cluster of many cells, so you're not little, you are big. And now oxygen diffuses into the outer cluster of cells. Well, then the inner cells get much less oxygen because the outer cells use it up. So the oxygen diffuses to the first cells, and then there's not much oxygen left to get towards the center of this big cluster of cells. This thing doesn't have a lung either. So how do the interior cells get any oxygen? Well, there's only one way. There just needs to be more oxygen in the water. And now imagine you become even larger. You turn into Anomalocaris, this monster creature here. Well, that guy needs a lot of oxygen. This guy probably also already had gills, so it actively transported oxygen. But you get the idea. You need it for bigger clusters of cells before the lungs and gills and active oxygen transport systems evolve. You simply needed more oxygen. You already know about the evolution of oxygen through time. That's shown in this slide here. And on the y-axis, you have here present atmospheric levels of oxygen, PAL. And here is 100%, here's 10%, 1%. In the Archean, we had less than 10 times, 2 times 10 to the power of -5. Then at the great oxidation event, it shot up, overshot maybe, we don't know, but it was pretty low still during the boring billion. But then we know sometimes in the Neoproterozoic oxygen went up, 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 and it certainly was high enough in the Cambrian. So prerequisite oxygen, tick, we have that. Prerequisite number 2, the rise of algae, food. For complex ecosystems and large complex creatures to evolve, you simply had to have an efficient carbon and nutrient source. That from the bottom of the food chain, where the primary producers are, enough energy and nutrients had to be there to trickle up for different trophic levels towards our top predator. And you also have learned that the transition from small, inefficient food particles to large, juicy algae that are much larger, that transition happened around 650 million years ago, just in time for the Cambrian explosion. Prerequisite number 3. Have you ever thought about why mammals and our ancestors became abundant, diverse, and very, very large just when dinosaurs went extinct? Well, that's not an accident. And I can tell you, it's not that the mammals killed the dinosaurs. But when the dinosaurs went extinct, they left a lot of empty niches. For example, the niche of being an enormously large herbivore. After the last big dinosaur went extinct, that niche was empty. So small shrew-like mammals could afford to simply become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until they were an elephant and even much bigger than an elephant, taking the niche of the large herbivore. As long as the niche of large herbivore was actually occupied by dinosaurs, there was no space for small mammals to become bigger, because the dinosaurs were already so good at being large. The lesson here is, for things to radiate, to explore new space, explore new bioplans, you need empty ecospace to radiate into. And that's actually what existed also for the Cambrian explosion, because these guys that you see here, this is Avalofructus, this is one of our rangeomorphs, this is one of the Ediacaryota. All of these creatures were extinct by the end of the Ediacaran period. The oceans were virtually devoid of anything that's relatively large and complex. So modern animals could explode and radiate into an empty ocean. They could experiment around. There was nothing bigger that could hold them down. So prerequisite number 3 is empty niches, empty ecospace to radiate into. Prerequisite number 4 is more complex, and I will talk about that in the next video. It is the emergence of a developmental toolkit. It's not enough to have oxygen and food and empty ecospace. You also need to have the evolution to become complex and large and make use of all of that. And that's genetics. Our genome, animal genomes, had to develop a way, like a toolkit, like a Lego set, to put genes together, rearrange them, recursively wire them, make cassettes and boxes out of them that you can duplicate to be able to very, very quickly construct a complex animal that had a bilaterian body, that had segments and appendages and areoles and a mouth and a gut system and different organs. So the most important requisite was genetics. And that's what we're going to discuss in the next video.